What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from the 107 MMA channel. And today we are talking about my favorite fighter, Khamzat Chimaev, who is fighting this weekend at UFC 308. And I wanted to talk about some of the things that are being said about Khamzat in relation to his cardio, his skill set. And I'm really perplexed, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm really perplexed as to why so many people are picking Robert Whittaker in this fight. And by the way, that's no disrespect to Robert Whittaker. He is arguably the greatest middleweight in the division right now, or at least one of them. And he is a tremendous, tremendous fighter. So this is, I mean, no disrespect by being shocked by people making these predictions, but it's simply that I just think Khamzat is that good, and he is, I guess at this point, becoming an underrated fighter, in my opinion. I want to talk about some of the things that people have been pointing out. I want to talk about why I think these perceptions of Khamzat are incorrect. So we're going to go from the top down. And the first thing I want to talk about and address is Khamzat's cardio. This is something that people keep bringing up over and over, is that apparently people think his cardio is weak and he's the best fighter in the UFC in the first round. But after that, he's simply not that impressive. So I'm going to go over to a clip from Michael Bisping from his YouTube channel, and we're going to see exactly what he said. And this is what lots of people are saying, not just pick on Michael Bisping in particular. So check this out.
Can he watch his diet, and can he go 5 rounds hard? Because when he went up against Kamaru Usman, yeah, he destroyed Kamaru Usman in the first round. But again, just like against Gilbert Burns, slowed down in the second and the third. So what does that mean? Well, it means that Khamzat Chimaev is probably the best one-round fighter that we have in the UFC.
Okay, so we're going to stop right here. And the reason why I'm going to jump in right here. So this narrative has been going around, and people are not acknowledging what exactly happened in both of those fights. So if you remember, first of all, he won both of those fights, okay? But the Gilbert Burns fight, people are acting like he did terrible in that fight just because he eked out a decision against a tremendously difficult fighter to compete against. But he did win that fight. Now, if you remember back then, his coach and his training staff came out after that fight saying that Khamzat did not follow the game plan. He did not fight as he was supposed to fight. So I know that's not, maybe sounds like an excuse, but he was standing up, he was striking, he was getting into exchanges when the plan was to utilize his wrestling game much more so, and he just didn't. So he didn't follow the plan, and I think it was a lot closer than it should have been or would have been if he would have followed instructions a bit better. You might call that making excuses, but that is what happened. And I remember listening to all these interviews back then because, again, he is my favorite fighter, so I watch everything about Khamzat. Now, the second point is he talks about Kamaru Usman, where he dominated Kamaru Usman in the first round of their fight. If you rewatch that fight, he really did. And by the way, Kamaru Usman himself said that he picks Khamzat Chimaev to beat Robert Whittaker. Now, you might say, well, of course, you want to pick the guy that's beaten you to win so that you look better, right? If he's beating tougher and tougher competition, it makes your loss not look as bad. That could, but I don't think that's the case. I think that Kamaru Usman is being completely sincere and genuine, and he's acknowledging that Khamzat is a force to be reckoned with. Now, we go back to that fight, and if you remember in the first round, yes, Khamzat dominated, but then things slowed down in the second and the third. He didn't go to the ground, and people were saying maybe he's exhausted. That's not what happened. People forget that what happened in that fight is Khamzat came out, and he thought he broke his hand in the first round. It came back that he did not break his hand, but he had a severe tendon sprain, I believe. So he had a damaged hand, and that's why his game plan changed so much from the first round to the second and the third. He had to change his game plan on the fly because he had sustained a severe injury in round one. So all this talk about his cardio being terrible and whatnot, I think it's just totally, totally false and totally, totally wrong. Now, the one thing that you can say, and we're going to talk about this in point 2, is perhaps he was overtraining, and maybe that's causing a depletion in his body. Maybe the weight cut's difficult. You could say all these things, but if you watch the UFC video that they dropped earlier this week, which is incredible, I highly recommend it. It's the breakdown of the fight between Robert Whittaker and Khamzat in particular, but you see what he's doing now, and I think people are glossing over this fact. He has moved his entire camp to these extremely high mountains in Russia. He's got the best coaches, best wrestling coaches, best combat coaches. He's got an entire team in isolation, training as if their life depends on this fight. And moreover, the coach himself said that at these high levels of elevation, it raises the amount of red blood cells in your bloodstream 4x. And that's that essentially this is again what the coach said, that essentially that higher level of blood cells, red blood cells in your body, stays in your system for up to 90 days after you leave that region. So if you want to even think that maybe cardio is playing a role here, he's so dialed in for this camp, and he's done, I mean, that pure amount of devotion to what he's doing now. And also, he also mentioned in that interview that he's happy now. He's making his own decisions. He's chosen his team. He's chosen his coaches, all these amazing people from Russia. He's got incredible people around him. I think that we're going to see this cardio thing as a myth. If it goes 5 rounds, I think it's going to finish much sooner, but I do believe it's a complete myth. Now we're going to go to point 2, but everybody's talking about the illness and he's always getting sick. And maybe it's because of overtraining. Maybe it's because he had COVID and it was such a difficult bout with COVID that just damaged his body. I also think that's not true. So if you listen again and take Khamzat at his word, and I do take him at his word because I do think he's actually tremendously honest person and he doesn't hype things up. He speaks his heart. People want to disagree with me on that. I don't know what to say because I suppose I theoretically could be wrong, but I think if you listen to him talk enough, you realize that I think anybody can pick up on the fact that he's a very sincere person. So if we're talking about the illness and the sicknesses and all these things, that he himself said was because he was not training correctly. He was overtraining. So many people have come out and said this that have trained with him. I think Borjalho, that fighter, I can't remember his first name, Siao, or I can't remember how to pronounce it, but he used to train with Khamzat, and he said Khamzat overtrains. Khamzat in the interview himself said now with his new team, he's got his nutrition dialed in. He's got everything reconfigured and he's not overtraining anymore. He said he wasn't doing proper recovery, and this was breaking down his body, and I believe this was leading to those illnesses reoccurring. He just simply wasn't having the care and attention. He would go in like a juggernaut and just train. He said he would train 6 hours a day, not taking proper rest and recovery, probably not paying attention to his diet, etc. All these things have been fixed. So even if you want, and the illness has nothing to do with his fight performance, he still never lost. And by the way, people love to talk about the Kamaru Usman fight and say it was close and short notice, so it wasn't that impressive. They love to talk about the Gilbert Burns fight because it was close, but he still won. What about the Kevin Holland fight? What about the Li Jingliang fight? Those were so dominant, and we saw the speed. The way he shoots a double leg is out of control. So anyways, I just wanted to address those points and dispel those points as well, because I think that we're gonna see something very, very special when we see this fight take place. Another thing that I want to talk about is his underrated striking. People are saying it's going to be wrestling and that's it. That's his go-to. But remember the wrestling as we've seen with Bilal Muhammad and Islam, as well as obviously Khabib. We see that this tremendous ground game opens up the striking. But Khamzat has very, very special striking. He has been known to train at Tiger Muay Thai in Thailand. We've seen his striking. He knocked out Gerald Meerschaert, a 17-second KO, if I'm not mistaken, 1-punch knockout. He has got, and that was at middleweight, by the way. Okay, so for those of you who are saying, hey, maybe that's no, that was at middleweight, if you remember. So he's got the KO power. He's extremely fast. He's got a longer reach than Robert Whittaker. Even just watching him hit the pads, I think his striking is phenomenal. So people have been saying that Robert Whittaker has a striking advantage. I don't think so. I just don't think we've seen enough of Khamzat striking. Plus, you take that in addition, or kind of rolled into a package with his tremendous wrestling and grappling. He's a tremendous striker. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a knockout finish here. Okay. The last thing is that it's not that people have said that he hasn't improved, but he's been off for a while. Okay. He hasn't fought since the Kamaru Usman fight. So it's been quite some time since he's had a fight. And again, if you look at when he got sick, and then that was back in June when the fight was canceled, people are just assuming that everything we saw in the Kamaru Usman fight or the Gilbert Burns fight is going to still be what's happening now. They're assuming that he's not investing time and energy and money into building a good team and a phenomenal camp. And I'm sure he is. He's got so much support from the people around him, from the people of Chechnya. He's got a close relationship there as well. So I can guarantee you and that he's probably invested the time, the money, the resources to dial everything back in. So not only have these issues probably resolved with his health, with his cardio, which I don't even think was an issue. I think that's nonsense. But I guarantee you his skill set has improved tremendously. I think we're going to see a substantially better version of Khamzat Chimaev than we saw against Kamaru Usman, who was still amazing and had a very dominant performance. So anyways, this is what I firmly believe. I firmly believe that Khamzat is going to get the win. And we used to look at him as this mythical, almost like a superhero, like he just couldn't be stopped. And somewhere along the lines, maybe a combination of inactivity and, you could say, quote unquote, below expectation results against Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman, which were still victories. I think people just thought he was going to steamroll them both. He almost did steamroll Kamaru, by the way. That was very close to ending in the first round. But I guess because they didn't turn out to be just complete annihilation like it was against Li Jingliang or Kevin Holland, that people lost faith in him. But I think we're going to see very quickly on Saturday that that is not the case. And this is, again, nothing against Robert Whittaker. The performance, I believe, will be so dominant. And we have to remember that Robert Whittaker is tremendous. And I do believe Robert Whittaker could beat Dricus du Plessis. I do believe he could beat Israel Adesanya with all the work he's put in. I think he's tremendous. I just think Khamzat is the greatest fighter in the UFC. And I think we're going to see that now, finally, once and for all. That's what I'm saying. That's my prediction. Obviously, it's a fight. We never know. And that's what's so fun about this sport and about this game. But I'll tell you this, and yes, I'm biased because he is my favorite fighter. But I think this is as close to something that I feel like is a lock as, well, I mean, there's probably been better odds and closer locks, right? Because it's just very difficult competition. But I just wholeheartedly believe in Khamzat Chimaev. So let's see if I'm right or wrong. I think I'm right. That's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you are new to the channel, I hope you guys please click that like button and definitely join along. We have regular shows every Monday and Friday with Justin Guitar Hero James, former UFC fighter. You get all his terrific insights. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining, and we will see you in the next video. Take it easy.